On this edition of the program, the Democrats are on the hunt for men as their long, dark night of the soul continues. And what the hell is going on with Nancy Mace in Congress? A peek into one of the most tawdry tales on Capitol Hill. Plus, consumer confidence is up and a controversial change to the COVID vaccine recommendations from the Health and Human Services Department. It is all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for May 28th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here from Austin, Texas. Got some good rain in last night. Broke the heat wave. This is all I'm asking. Texas summer. Just nights like that. I know it's going to be 100 in the middle of the summer. That's fine. Just give me 3 or 4 of those. Just a big old rainstorm, dumps a bunch of water, washes all of our cars for free, and it just gives us a little bit of a nice day. Because today, chef's kiss. It's probably going to be like this for the next week, which I'm very excited about. We're going to get into some of how the Democrats are rebuilding themselves, according to a New York Times article, and we will also go deep into the story of Nancy Mace because there's been so much news that has come out of the White House, obviously, trying to negotiate things in Israel and Gaza and Moscow and Kyiv and India and Pakistan. The Liberation Day stuff. You put your right tariff in, you take your left tariff out. We're going to get to all that, and that also with the immigration stuff. But while that is happening, and while the Republicans are passing the one big, beautiful bill through the House, there is something that if some of that stuff wasn't as loud, if we just remove Trump and just replace him with a regular old president, this would be getting a lot more attention because it is very tawdry. It involves a congresswoman. She says she was recorded. She put a silhouette of herself naked on a poster board. If you haven't heard any of the Nancy Mace stuff, you're going to enjoy it. If you have heard and followed this story, we have some new information by way of our friends at 24 Site. That and an update on how the Senate is handling the one big, beautiful bill, some good economic news in terms of consumer sentiment, and a very controversial COVID decision. But we begin with this New York Times article. The headline is, Democrats still searching for a path forward months after the 2024 election. What I want to do is just go through a few of the quotes in here. Real listeners to PX3 will be delighted to know that the lead of this story is a quote from one of our favorite guests on the progressive side, Anat Shenker-Osario. She said that one of the things that she likes to do when talking to Democratic voters is to have them put each party into the body of an animal. She has said she has found lately that the Republicans get a lot of lions, a lot of tigers, apex predators, and the Democrats get a lot of sloths, snails. That was until somebody recently said, no, I think it's like a deer in headlights. So here's some quotes from this New York Times article. 6 months after President Trump swept the battleground states, the Democratic Party is still sifting through the wreckage. Its standing has plunged to startling new lows, 27% approval in a recent NBC poll, the weakest in surveys dating to 1990, after a defeat that felt like a political and cultural rejection. One of the things that happened over the last week, and we're going to have to wait until next week because of some Memorial Day travel plans, but we're going to bring on Michael Cohen and we're going to go through some of the results of a firm called Catalyst. Catalyst is a Democratic-leaning polling firm, but they did their all the votes are in breakdown of the 2024 election. And the coalition looks grim. For Democrats, there's not a lot of good news there. Now you can say, okay, well, hey, Kamala was never polling particularly high, and we just went through the hirsute last week of everybody talking about never again with Joe Biden. We should never specifically have somebody that is definitely going to be an albatross, and we can all see that it's a disaster, and we keep letting it going, and then eventually we have to do a hot swap late in the summer. Let's never do that again. Let's all agree we will never do that again. But the big question really remains, are the Democrats a rebranding away, or do they have more serious structural problems? And I would submit to anybody who is listening to this that I believe it's the latter. Not because they've necessarily picked the wrong ideology, not because they have been too center, too left, whatever. Think whatever you want about any of that. It is that right now, they don't have a coalition. They are not speaking to people that can win them a national election. And increasingly, when you look at the Senate, not speaking to the kind of people that can give them a senatorial advantage. We go back to the New York Times article. While the overall margin was close, most of the battleground states themselves were relatively tight. The country as a whole shifted markedly to the right in the final tally. Mr. Trump won a nearly identical percentage of the vote in the battleground state of Arizona, 52.2%, as Ms. Harris won in the supposedly safe state of New Jersey, 52%. I'm telling you, you guys are going to screw around and send me to Hoboken in November this year to see whether or not Republicans are actually going to make a case for New Jersey. But the larger point is this. This isn't as bad as it can get for Dems. If you think this is all about Joe Biden, if you think this was all about Kamala Harris, my point is it's not. If the shifts that you are seeing demographically harden, then it's going to be harder to push forward because the data, New York Times did a great job of this. They looked at counties that have continued to trend red post-Trump. So they voted more conservative than they did from 2012 to 2016 at the beginning. Then they voted more red in 2020 than they did in 2016. And then they voted more red in 2024 than they did in 2020. And the numbers there, especially when you put them in the New York Times graph, shows wide swaths of the country pointing rightward. Now, there are a few bright spots for Democrats, specifically to Jon Ossoff, who has erased this midterms. The Atlanta suburbs have continued to vote bluer. Every election for the last 3 elections. Oh, those Atlanta suburbs. Oh boy, do they love voting left, 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 right? So good for Jon Ossoff because that's the population center there. He's going to need that if he wants to secure re-election. But for the rest of the country, when you allow your opponents to pick off people that you were counting on, it rarely goes well for you. And here's where we go from the ridiculous to the sublime. For now, we go back to quoting the New York Times. Democratic donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working class voters, commissioning new projects that can read like anthropological studies of people in faraway places. The prospectus for one $20 million effort obtained by the Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things. Quote, one strategist, above all, we must shift from a moralizing tone. Oh no, that's not a strategist. That's from Sam. Guys. Well, whoever wrote Sam. I'm going to give you maybe not $20 million worth of game for free. I'm just going to let you know right now. Do you want to know if your politician can speak with authenticity to a baseline male audience? We can do this very cheaply. In fact, we can do this during lunch. I need you to go to any sports bar for lunch. I want you to sit at the bar. Don't sit at a table. Sit at the bar. I want you to do a few things. Number one, I want you to talk to the bartender. And I want you to ask the bartender what kind of stuff they show around here. So it'll probably be in DC because that's where everybody lives. So, right now, kind of light. But ask them, when do you get your biggest crowds? I'm going to take a wild guess. It's probably for Capitals games, maybe Nationals games. I don't know if they're doing really well right now. And then obviously Commanders games. Also see whether or not they say Commanders or they say Redskins. Keep that in mind. That's going to be a little bit of game. Then I want you to look around. It's going to be lunchtime. So I've been to a sports bar during lunchtime. You're going to see a guy without sleeves. His name is Pat McAfee. He took a podcast that initially was partnered with Barstool and then eventually parlayed that into getting national airtime for a podcast that he produces. Pat McAfee is somebody that defines a wide enough cross-section of the American male demographic that you should pay attention. Not that you need to recruit Pat McAfee. You desperately don't. You don't want anybody to be too political because that is one of the biggest things that the Democrats just cannot wrap their head around. When they look at stuff like this, I'm going to guarantee you, I have not read this report, but if you have this report, email it to me, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. I would love to read it. I'm going to take a wild guess. Here's what this report says that they should do. Identify the things that the demographic they need to win watches and then buy a lot of advertising on it. Pretty easy, right? So cut off $5 million for them to write the report, $15 million that they're going to allot to go and buy ads. It's going to be useless because one of the biggest problems that Democrats have is that they believe everything is messaging and that their messaging so finely tuned. Oh, it's perfect. So it needs to be said exactly as it needs to be said because we have focus tested this within an inch of its life. It's not the way it works. You need non-political people to help you adjust the culture to be something for which non-traditional voters can see more of where you're going, because that's where they really, really got into trouble with men. was that you had non-traditional voters that were usually younger that would tend to go to Democrats, but they felt either personally injured by Democratic messaging by way of general, what would thought to be feminist thought that is metastasized and politicized via the algorithms into something else. Or they just liked people that were talking about things that identified with a more conservative worldview. They just liked comedians that were joking about trans athletes. They just liked comedians that were joking about liberals being totally spun up and psychotic. Or they felt motivated by the idea that they saw liberals as being anti-free speech, anti-fun. That men, white men specifically, I don't know if you've paid attention, Democrats, but this is an 85% white country. Yes, it is changing, but guess what? You're doing even worse with Latino men, but white men were privileged. It's all right. You've already started the conversation poorly. So how do you start to win back? Well, look at guests that you could have on Pat McAfee. And I don't mean book them today. I mean, look at the guests that are there and see what they have in common. They're probably going to mostly stick to sports. They're probably going to have a baseline conservative worldview because most sports people are pretty conservative. There are some, NBA is one of them, that has more of a progressive attitude. But by and large, if you're talking about football, if you're talking about hockey, talking about soccer, these guys are by and large pretty conservative. They're athletes, they're apex performers, they're alpha males, but they're pretty conservative. Now think about the thing that you do that is most likely to resonate with those guests. Not the thing you want to talk about, but the thing that they would like the most. Now, in the past, that was stuff like civil rights protections, drug legalization. If you're talking certain avenues, maybe you can go with a gay marriage thing, but that's, again, something that you probably might want to stay away from because it doesn't speak to them. These are boys being boys. Even the gay ones don't want to talk about gay marriage equality because they're in a different phase of life. That's your Rosetta Stone. And so when you're thinking about politicians, you're thinking about messages, think about what message would stand out the least on the Pat McAfee show. And you can go ahead and send me, I have my PayPal. I read my PayPal and my Venmo at the end, but if you just want to hit me with just $1 million, I'll be happy to take it. I want to read one more quote here. Trump's numbers seem to be getting worse and worse, and I'm pretty optimistic Democrats will have some real opportunities in 2026, said Zach McCrary, a Democratic pollster. Now, on the Sunday show, which you can get exclusively via Substack, if you are a paying subscriber, we went over some of this, so it's going to be a little bit of a retread to folks who listen to that show. But I just want to point a few things out to Zach. Number one, Zach is historically correct that the party out of power tends to win in midterms. And I have no either data or gut feeling that says that that won't be the case. My assumption is going to be that Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House at the end of the midterms. But with that being said, I do want to dispel the notion that Donald Trump's polls seem to be getting worse and worse because they hit their lowest point in late April. Donald Trump has spent May rebounding out of the doldrums. He, by the Real Clear Politics aggregate, we'll put this up here on the screen. The Real Clear Politics aggregate had Trump at his lowest at like 45% approval. His disapproval crested around 52.5%, something like that. Since then, his disapproval, dipped down into the high 40s, but now is leveled off at about 50. So half the country disapproves, but half the country approves. His approval number is around 47 and change. For Donald Trump, the most polarizing guy in the world, that's good. I mean, let's remember back to Trump 1. His approval rating sank into the 30s pretty quickly, and they stayed there by and large. If he's at 47, considering he usually outperforms his polls, at least when he's running, which he's not, so that is important to point out, I would say he's probably a little bit more popular than those numbers suggest. But here's the other big thing, and this is what I went over on Sunday. We'll put the direction of the country image up there. Right now, 43.6% of Americans believe that America is on the right track. 50.9% Americans believe that it is the wrong track. That means that there is a gulf of 7.3 points at the point that I took this graphic. It might have changed by the time that you were listening to this. Now, if that doesn't sound crazy to you, let me just put that into comparison. Because Joe Biden at his highest was a 42% right track. And he got that after January 6th and when he was looked at as the COVID savior. Okay? That's what it took for him to get to 42%. We have never been at a sustained majority believe right track in our modern era. The closest we got was Obama right after he got elected, where we kind of kissed at a 50-50. So we were split. Now, I don't know if I believe that Donald Trump will keep this up. History says that some bloom comes off the rose. What I would warn Democrats on, though, is don't just assume because you want to believe in the messaging that he is unpopular or that he is getting less popular. Underestimating Donald Trump has brought about to the Democratic Party the position that they are in right now. They've never looked at him as a coalition builder. They've never looked at him as somebody that speaks to Democratic voters that could be wooed over the line. And repeatedly, he has done that, even if he didn't win in 2020. I think things like no tax on tips and no tax on overtime is going to be looked at extraordinarily favorably by voters that are going to go to the polls in this midterm. And I think Democrats know it too. The reason why? Because in the Senate, they passed a no tax on tips law 100-0. That means all the Democrats believed that they didn't want to have their name on saying they voted against no tax on tips. Now they're two different things. What is in the big, beautiful bill and that law is actually kind of worse because it only exempts cash tips, which is kind of stupid because nobody reported cash tips anyway. But still, they got 100-0, which means that they don't want that said in an ad against them. So yeah, you can talk about the bond market. We're going to talk about the debt in a little bit. But for my money, what Democrats need to get back to is start talking about things that they have a track record on, that people believe them to be a part of it. And I'm not going to talk anymore about Biden. We talked so much about Biden last week, but please allow me this one indulgence. The reason why a break in trust is important is because so much of politics is a he said, she said. Right now, you're seeing this play out with the big, beautiful bill. Democrats say this is ruining Medicaid so they can pay the billionaires. And Republicans are going to say, look, we are only trying to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in this system. We are not cutting Medicaid at all. Who are you going to believe? Especially if one side just lied to you. This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes of this show each and every week. We will be, no problem with our schedule this week. We got a little travel, so I had to mentally go through it. My little baby girl is going to go on her first plane ride. We're going back to the ancestral homeland of South Florida this weekend. Big family get together. She's going to meet her cousins for the first time. It's a delight. It's good. But it will not mean your content will be delayed at all. You will get your 2 bonus podcasts each and every week, one of which you already got if you're already on the team. Otherwise, we're going to get our late edition in. That'll be to you Wednesday evening for your Thursday morning enjoyment. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to be part of the Substack team. Let's get to some of the stories we didn't have a chance to talk about. U.S. and EU trade officials intensified negotiations to avert a potential trade conflict following President Donald Trump's threat of imposing 50% tariffs on European goods starting on June 1st. A phone call between Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen led to a postponement of the tariff implementation to July 9th, calming global markets, which spiked on Monday morning. Despite the reprieve, some EU officials expressed frustration over the volatile negotiation process. EU Trade Commissioner Marcos Šefčovič emphasized the EU's commitment to constructive talks, while the European Commission highlighted readiness for a 0-for-0 tariff deal and confirmed preparations for countermeasures should negotiations fail. Both sides are re-engaged at the highest levels, signaling potential progress toward a trade resolution. Meanwhile, good news for the Trump White House. The Confidence Board Consumer Confidence Index, a nonprofit institution and nonpartisan institution, increased by 12.3 points in May to 28%, up from 85.7. The expectation was for it to go up modestly into the low 90s. It wound up going into the high 90s. The Present Situation Index, based on consumers' assessment of current businesses and labor markets, rose 4.8 points to 103.9. And the Expectations Index, based on consumers' short-term outlook for incomes, businesses, and labor market conditions, surged 17.4 points to 72.8. That remains below the 80% threshold, which usually signals a recession, but now it is moving pretty quickly in the right direction. And those numbers might even be a low ball, according to the conference board, because half of the respondents were collected after the May 12th announcement about the China tariffs. This is where I get again with the Democrats. It's like, if all you do is point at things that Republicans are doing and say, this is the worst, this is ruining everything, then you are subject to starting over if the thing goes well. So you are right to say that Donald Trump is chaotic, but I don't think that that's the flex that Democrats think it is, because people have been sending presidents to the White House to shake things up, since after Bush. Obama was sent to the White House to shake things up. Trump was sent to the White House to shake things up. Biden was sent to calm down, but we saw how that worked out. It reignited the passion to shake things up. What you're seeing in some of these numbers is that Americans are starting to believe that the trade deals are good for America. And that's not great for Democrats, because Donald Trump surely is going to drill into the American mind, we could have done this anytime. Nobody wanted to do it. Not Democrats, not Republicans. Only my Republican Party would do it. And he is going to lift up a bunch of disciples that will say, we will continue this strategy. Republican lawmakers are raising alarms over the fiscal consequences of President Trump's 1,116-page One Beautiful Bill, which could add $3 trillion to the national debt over 10 years. Fiscal conservatives, including Senators Rick Scott, Rand Paul, and Ron Johnson, warned that the bill's failure to significantly curb federal spending is already rattling bond markets with rising yields, signaling investor concern. Though many GOP senators support elements like extending the Trump tax cuts, increased defense spending, and border security funding, they criticize the lack of serious debt reduction. Senator Paul called the bill a debt bomb, citing unsustainable annual deficits projected to exceed $2 trillion. Critics also argue that the bill's proposed savings are either delayed or minimal, with some centrist Republicans calling for more offsetting measures. Internal GOP divisions, especially over Medicaid reforms and clean energy cuts, further complicate its Senate prospects. With only 3 defections possible, conservatives are aiming to push for deeper cuts or threaten to sink the bill. They're not sinking the bill. I'm telling you right now. The thing that I am paying attention to right now is exactly what we just read. Who's talking? Because if you're talking, it means you want something. They're just little baby birds. Cheep, 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 cheep. It means that they want a worm. But equally as important, who's not talking? And here's the reason why. The people that are not talking are important, because it signals that either they're closer to voting yes, or they believe that they can negotiate behind the scenes a way to vote yes. They don't need to make a big scene. They don't need to try to pressure the facts on the ground by way of public pressure. Because that's what this is. This is fiscal conservatives going out to the public and saying, this is bad for you. Please affect my reality so I can do this for you. It usually indicates that you don't have much stroke inside. The Senate has been very quiet on the raucous House negotiations, and now it is their turn. 2 things. Number 1, will this bill get passed? I believe it will. Number 2, when will it get passed? And will there be room for other priorities because it happens earlier rather than later? Those are the questions. And finally, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is no longer recommending COVID-19 vaccinations for healthy children and healthy pregnant women. Kennedy criticized the previous administration's push for repeated boosters in children, citing a lack of sufficient clinical data. The policy change may influence medical advice and insurance coverage for these groups. Public health officials have expressed concerns that the new guidelines could hinder efforts to protect vulnerable populations, especially as new COVID variants, including NB181, has emerged in the United States. What we saw in terms of popular opinion post-COVID, specifically as it came to the vaccination conversation, is that there arose a middle of people that were not against the vaccine, many of which got them at least once, maybe twice, but were hesitant about making it a yearly thing like a flu shot. So that's the middle, and I think that's the vast majority of the country. You then obviously have your anti-vaxxers that believe that the COVID shot is dangerous for you, that it causes injury. And then you have people that believe the COVID pandemic never ended. All that happened was the cruel nature of humanity turned their back on a vulnerable population, and they are hoping that they will all die. I think this policy, by the numbers, is something that is probably more in line with the center. That being said, the big question here in terms of what you will have to deal with, regardless of where you are on this, if you want the vaccines, this is going to affect whether or not insurance will cover it. So are we in a world where insurance will cover your COVID vaccine booster yearly for pregnant women and for kids? The answer right now is probably not. I mean, we'll see what the insurance companies do, but a lot of them just go right by the recommendations that are put out by Health and Human Services and the CDC. So something to watch. A controversial decision, especially anytime that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is near the word vaccine. You know that there's going to be a lot of discussion around it. That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes of this each and every week. And now, our discussion about Nancy Mace. I would like to welcome Juliegrace Brufke. She has a great scoop on our friend Tom LoBianco's 24-site news, and it is all about, in a very chaotic political world where there's a lot of competing stories that are there for your attention, for the real heads that are watching Congress, there's one curiosity that continues to pop up, oftentimes in exciting, if not lurid detail. It is the trials of Nancy Mace. Juliegrace, how you doing?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
So let's go back before we get to your reporting on this, because I want to put it into context so people really understand it. Spell out the Nancy Mace of it all for us. Where should we start?
Let's see, just kind of like, I guess she came into Congress. She was kind of a moderate. She kind of seemed a little more pragmatic, and then slowly kind of started to progress as more of a firebrand, where she played a pretty key role in ousting Kevin McCarthy and is kind of taking a hard turn to the right. So she's a
congresswoman from South Carolina. And I would say, from my perspective, outside of the Beltway, one of those people that comes in and is kind of tagged for bigger things. She's kind of on a track. But with that, you kind of find out, well, how much of an operator are you? How much of why you got to the dance is going to be how you stay there, especially if people are promising you more and better things. And she has tended to go more from the I'm a pragmatic problem solver to I am a MAGA loyalist and a Trump firebrand. But even then, she seems to be, even by that standard, a little bit aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there have been a lot of frustrations with her colleagues. And I mean, there's a lot of gubernatorial rumors. She's kind of floated it out there. She's been taking aim at Joe Wilson's son, Alan Wilson, who's the AG in South Carolina. But I mean, I think she kind of started to ramp up publicity stunts kind of a while back of showing up wearing a scarlet A to a giant meeting, comparing herself to the Scarlet Letter. And then she recently had a really inflammatory floor speech where she accused her ex-fiance of running a trafficking ring. And then was saying it was protected speech. So she is facing some lawsuits, which is kind of dicey whether that is
so let's
stay
there for a second, because that was one of the more extraordinary elements. And you, dear listener, would be if you're like, wait a minute, hold on. A congresswoman gave a floor speech where she accused her husband of being and his friends of being sex traffickers. I will add to that the detail that she put their faces and full names up on boards while she was doing this, and the allegations were pretty heinous. So before we get into everything that kind of stems from this, what were the accusations specifically?
Well, she was saying that there were rape accusations and there were accusations of voyeurism and filming women without their consent. And she was saying that she had all of these videos from his cell phone. And I mean, I guess it was probably a week ago now in the House Oversight subcommittee that she was chairing. She was like, I'm going to show my naked body on a poster, footage, which was kind of largely just kind of a shadow figure there ultimately. So quite as graphic as some were kind of worried about in Congress. But it's, I mean, it's definitely been a dramatic.
So correct me if I'm wrong on this. Her accusations were, and if you did not see this, it is because it did not get a ton of coverage. You really had to be a C-SPAN sleuth to find exactly where this was. But it was a long speech on the floor, flanked by two other members of the Republican caucus, two other women. I believe it was Lauren Boebert and Anna Paulina Luna that were behind her.
Tori Sparks was there for a little bit. Yeah. So it was about an hour and a half. It was
long. And essentially it boils down to this. There are three men in South Carolina, one of which was Nancy Mace's boyfriend, who had a vacation home that she says there was a security camera in the bedroom that they were recording people on. Now, this is where even on my standard here, I'm going to say this is all things that she said. This is not anything that we have any kind of proof on. There was no law enforcement report on this. She then also says that they were spiking women's drinks and taking advantage of them, and that she found this all out because she got her boyfriend's cell phone, and with technical skills, which I guess she has, she was able to look through the memory of the cameras, found the extra camera, and then found that was there. And so when you see the silhouette of her naked body, that is what she is saying that was from, right?
Yes. So it's been interesting. A lot of the South Carolina members have kind of cast doubt on it. I think there is an investigation into one of the men, but nothing really has kind of come of it. And she's really kind of been going after the AG there for not doing enough. Although I've talked to some people that said it's not totally under his jurisdiction until police refer something to him. So it's
yeah, and that's it. The other part about this is that in the next gubernatorial election, by all general knowledge of people who know things, it seems like the two people that would be the most popular in the Republican primary would be Nancy Mace and this attorney general. So there's another element of like, wait a minute, how is this going on now? All of a sudden you are saying that this guy is complicit in covering up sex trafficking. I mean, the accusations here have been very, very fiery, and she certainly spelled out in that hour and a half speech her version of events. But even then, it doesn't seem like a I'll put it this way. From my point of view, she has not elucidated next steps as to what she would like to see happen for these serious crimes.
Yeah, I mean, she said that she's reached out to law enforcement and then kind of taken an aim at Alan Wilson over that. And I know that, we'll get to my story in a little bit, but her former agent was saying that she came to him with concerns over things. He's like, why aren't you taking this to law enforcement? It could be career ending if you're just kind of using this for clout. So it's a wild ride. I mean, I guess we'll see what law enforcement produces there, but I know a lot of her colleagues feel the way she's handled it has kind of delegitimized her claims if they do turn out to be true, with the way they're not super thrilled with how she's presented those concerns.
And so it is at that point, dear listener, I'm going to leave the facts of this where they are. They are a bit of a jumbled mess. We can say that whoever authority-wise will work their way through them. If you want to find that Nancy Mace speech, I don't know where it's hosted these days because it is controversial. She's literally naming names and accusing them of crimes, which is a thing that technically, I guess her point of view is that it's legal to say that on the floor of Congress, even if it's not congressional business, although she tied it to her own story of survivorship. What you have followed up on are some of the behind the scenes machinations. So go ahead and talk about what your story is in 24 Sight.
So Wesley Donahue, her former senior consultant who she used to be friends with, who's kind of taken aim and said he doesn't believe anything multiple times on Twitter since then, got deposed as part of a lawsuit and involving her ex-fiance. And he testified there that she was trying to exploit the information that she found on his cell phone to leverage getting 2 houses from him. So it's, her ex-fiance's vehemently denied any wrongdoing, and she's facing lawsuits. She's suing other people for defamation. It's a whole legal mess there. But he said that she, despite finding the stuff, still went on vacation to an island with him, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to go get more information there." And he was encouraging her, if she was scared, to be turning this into the police. And yeah, it's kind of a whole mess there. But yeah, essentially, he was essentially accusing her of blackmailing. Requesting that he go on her behalf, go blackmail his ex-fiance. So per the deposition, he sat down with the ex-fiance and refused to comply with the push to go blackmail him. But kind of spoke to him about the relationship there. And I spoke with Wesley. He said he really didn't want to be involved or talk about it, but that he was deposed, which is ultimately why he ended up getting involved.
Yeah.
Like the chaos to calm down a little bit.
So just so I get my framework clear, this guy that was deposed was Nancy Mace's employee?
So he's her political consultant.
Political consultant. Okay. So a consultant that had been brought on. I'm presuming then from that context that this is just one of the consultants that operates in South Carolina that I'm sure has a history in South Carolina politics. She, again, a star on the rise, somebody that you'd probably want to be around, especially if you are a consultant like that. And then the ask comes in, hey, I have found this information on my fiance's phone. If he wants to make it go away, then how about these 2 properties and it all goes away? That is what he was deposed as saying?
Yes. So, and he had some legal concerns over that, and that's kind of when the professional breakup there happened. So
gotcha.
He since then has raised concerns about her lying about things, and he's repeatedly gone after her on X, formerly Twitter, since that all went down. So, it's interesting because there have been a lot of staffers that have kind of publicly condemned her since leaving that office. So it's going to be interesting if she does hop into the gubernatorial race on how that all plays out, because people have been pretty vocal that used to work for her.
Even in the, let's say, adjusted on a curve line of well-behaved offices, Nancy Mace's seems to be a bit unruly from the top. So obviously the fiance has reacted very strongly, as have the 2 compatriots of his, denying all of this, was anything untoward, and that this is Nancy making something. This is, Congresswoman Mace making something out of something that it is not. What is the sense of where this goes? If she's going to run for governor, when would we even know something like that?
I guess she's got some time before she'd have to jump in the race, but I think definitely I've talked to some members of Congress that think that she's kind of been using this to fundraise and draw some attention. I don't know, with the legal battle and going through discovery, and it's going to be interesting to see how this battle kind of. She's got name recognition. The MAGA base likes her, but I think these legal back and forths are kind of going to be an issue for her for sure. It's messy.
Yeah. And Nancy Mace is somebody that, if you are unfamiliar with her from this point of view, she also at the very beginning of this congressional term had a spat with a trans female congresswoman, the first, where she was drawing a line in the sand in terms of bathroom usage in a way where, and she's been very soundbite aware, let's say, euphemistically, when it comes to anything near a public mic that she believes that she could raise money on. Now that in and of itself,
watch her with that issue, because when she first got to Congress, it was very much gay rights, trans rights, and there's kind of a record of that on her social media, and it's kind of been a hard to the right on that. So there have been a few different issues since she got there that she's definitely pivoted on, including Trump. She was one of the big Trump critics when she first got up to Congress, and then kind of took a hard turn of her in front of Trump Tower taking videos, and now really kind of leaned in speaking at the RNC over last summer. So
it also, I've had people that I ping in Congress about this, they're just asking like, what is going on? Like, what is the sense there? And the thing that I got sent back was an old, I don't know if it's still up, but on her Twitter, she's supporting the attorney general after the point in which she says she had turned over this information to him that he needed to investigate because it involved, and I don't want to mince words here because this is her own story. This is what she said, but she says she's raped, and she has said she's a rape survivor in the past. Let me make this clear. She says she's a rape survivor in the past. I think she danced around specifically that term in her congressional testimony, but it was certainly led to believe that she was taken advantage of after being
absolutely. And
spiked.
Yeah. There were photos of her with Alan Wilson saying, "Thank you for standing up for women." And then a few months later, it's definitely hitting him over some of that stuff. So it's been an interesting progression to watch. She's kind of full of surprises there. So it's I think, it's going to be interesting to see kind of what her messaging is and what her team's going to look like. She kind of looks at higher office as she brings on consultants from that orbit. And she's likely to get the Club for Growth endorsement, but there were people that were kind of coming out trying to endorse against her, hoping for a primary in her congressional seat. She's definitely not particularly popular amongst the South Carolina delegation within Congress. So
did she, am I remembering this correctly? Did she have an ex-staffer run against her?
She did, yes. So her old chief of staff, Dan, did at one point, and then people were kind of encouraging that, and she got another primary opponent after that. People were kind of rooting for her. But yeah, there've been, I think of at least 3 staffers, consultants off the top of my head that have come out publicly and kind of railed against her. So, I think that's going to be a big challenge for her if she does kind of choose to run for higher office there.
If I were going to speak from her perspective, though, I don't know if it would necessarily be a negative, because the way that she has presented herself is certainly a firebrand who's running without permission. She has told a tale that is about the old boys network that's going to exact their costs no matter what. And if, she comes out and says, well, I'm standing up to change all that, and I'm here to sweep South Carolina free of all these old, baggage points, and ties the right political capital to it, I could see it be an interesting message. My thought from the outside, just a guy with a podcast, a barking dog on the internet, is I would wonder whether or not the center holds with her specifically, because she does seem to be, if you're going to chart it between energetic and erratic, she's been riding that line.
That is the line that, yeah. I mean, I've talked to a lot of members of Congress that have said it veers toward the latter there, but
yeah,
I mean, we'll see what comes out of some of these police investigations. Maybe she turns out to be the hero, depending on what's uncovered there. But I mean, from everyone I've talked to in the South Carolina delegation, they feel, and former staffers, they feel she kind of, maybe there were some things going on that she found on the phone that weren't particularly flattering or good, but that may have been dramatically exaggerated there.
I guess if we're going to get into the facts of this case as they are presented, and I am kind of loath to do it, mostly because we have obviously seen one perspective that has been made very, very loudly. The other three men, aside from saying that this isn't true, have not presented their version of events because they desperately would like things like human trafficking and rape to not be next to their names. But if we are to hypothesize there, I would guess that the big question is, where was the camera, and did she see a camera in the room? That would seem to be the thing that could be said is illegal, a secret camera in a private bedroom.
Which one of the men was cleared of wrongdoing and has brought that up, and she's facing a defamation lawsuit. So I guess, I mean, you figure discovery will uncover a lot of that on communications and as the investigation progresses there. But I feel like a lot of the facts, we are kind of hearing her side publicly, and some of these guys have been out there on Twitter kind of going after her and trying to dispel stuff and bring up some unflattering things politically from the past. So it's very Real Housewives meets Congress with the drama.
Whew. Boy, howdy. What lawsuit was this aide deposed in?
So I believe,
where did this deposition come from?
So that was involved her ex-fiance. So I mean, they've kind of been in a big dispute, and I feel like the property situation has been a big point of drama there. But yeah, so Wesley was he really didn't want to. Was reluctant to participate, but ultimately was deposed there. And yeah, I know was very.
Sorry, wait a minute. What is the case that this consultant was deposed in? That was a civil case between Nancy Mace and the fiance,
ex-fiance, and Nancy Mace.
Okay, so this is a civil case between them about adjacent things that might brush up against these accusations, but are not specifically about them.
Yeah, so it's there's a lot of different legal cases going on right now. You can see she's got some of his friends suing her. She's suing one of the friends over what he's put out there on social media. Lawyer fees can't be cheap, but it's yeah, I don't see it stopping anytime soon. So it's all the sides are kind of
gotcha. So this case is about properties that they either co-owned or had some claim to?
Yes. So that was kind of crux of what Wesley was testifying about there. So he, I know he very much didn't want to testify, got deposed, and he's kind of looking to move on to the next thing. So it's
he's like, literally, I just want to work behind the scenes in the Palmetto State, cashing checks and seeing whether or not I can get politicians over the finish line. I do not want to be the guy who snitches.
It is that was my takeaway from my conversation with him. So he's very ready to not be involved, but
gotcha. Do we know where this case is? Is it close to trial?
I would need to check in on that. So can ping around on that later. I should probably do a follow-up story on this. But yeah, it's definitely interesting.
I mean, yeah, I feel like there should be a Mace case tracker just to see kind of where we are and what would happen. When is that gubernatorial race? Is that in the midterms or afterward?
I believe it is the midterms. I got to double check.
It is the midterms. Okay.
Coffee on that, but yeah. It's,
so then one would imagine that she would probably leave Congress at some point, either toward the end of this year or the beginning of next year if she wanted to do it. Well, Wow. A very, very messy and, a story for which it doesn't seem like at least one side of it, the Nancy Mace side of it, wants to keep hidden. She kind of keeps wanting to push a lot of this out into the fore.
That is very true. I mean, between the oversight hearing, the floor speech, I mean, part of the defamation legal situation there from lawyers I've talked to is they're kind of claiming, even though it would be protected speech on the floor, that she was sending out the speech ahead of time, doing hits on it on television afterwards and putting it out on social media, which it's unclear if that kind of nullifies that argument. But yeah, I think it
was one of the craziest things I've ever seen, because
I've been covering Congress a long time, and that's a first for sure.
She posted the speech on her social media, but it was specifically not a thing she uploaded. She took another clip from somewhere else and either retweeted it or something like that. And, then that explodes everything. All of a sudden, that's where a lot of these defamation suits come out. All the television hits, she says she seemed to, have a lawyer-like idea of what she can say, what she can't say, referring to the speech for certain details, but obviously trying to draw attention to it, which is, I guess, where we get to some of the legal side of it. And that was...
It's fascinating. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like in a way it could set new precedents of how floor speeches are handled. And I mean, it kind of changed the precedent of being able to use the floor in a way to just be able to attack a political opponent in a way that I haven't seen done before.
I mean, especially because the point of it wasn't even to attack the political opponent. It's just to air dirty laundry. And if we are to take her claims 100% seriously and believe her 100%, it is certainly a very vile story that she is telling. Yeah. I don't know exactly what the people's business it informs where it moves legislation forward, but
she was bringing up certain bills, and I mean, she had handcuffs in a safe, and I mean, examples of all sorts of stuff during the floor speech that she was kind of using as props during. Not something you see every day, but yeah, it was
animated. So after that floor speech, big explosion, accusations flying everywhere, lawsuits being filed, defamation accusations. And then this is only a week ago that she shows her nude silhouette in Congress. What was her justification for that?
Well, it was a hearing that was kind of on a protection of women bill.
Okay.
It involved something to do with voyeurism. So she brought that up and kind of used herself as an example during the hearing. But it is interesting because I feel like for it being such an explosive thing, members outside of the South Carolina, as a whole on the Republican side, haven't called a lot of attention. You don't see it on the House GOP's Twitter account or other members going out and talking about it. I feel like it's very much a shying away from that, if anything. But
it is its own little wormhole of drama. Yes. It does not seem particularly plugged into, and also it's kind of fallen to the wayside because there's so much news to be covered, between the tariff hokey pokey and, the deportations and the El Salvador of it all. It's
no shortage of other major things going on, but it's fun. When you ask members about it, they're all kind of like, oh, I haven't really been paying attention to that. So it's been interesting to watch people dance around that.
Which is wild because in another world, this would be kind of wall to wall, right? Especially in the world of congressional reporting.
Well, I know I had talked to a bunch of female members that all had gotten a notice before that floor speech. It was please come sit behind Nancy on the floor. It has to do with standing behind women. And a bunch of people weren't sure what it was. And then, I mean, you saw Lauren Boebert, Victoria Sparks, and Anna Paulina Luna there. It was kind of outside of that, largely an empty chamber.
Yeah.
That's...
well, we will keep an eye on it, and it is interesting to see that there is some of this that is already kind of coming to light by way of the depositions in the myriad lawsuits that are being filed around it. Juliegrace, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, anytime. Thanks for having me.
And And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Our editor, wait, you want to know what? I upgraded him. Our producer is Will Saddleberg. It's not just the editor, because he's helping us book and scheduling things. It's a man about town, man. He's making things happen. TheYoungAmerican@gmail.com is where you need to go if you want to email this show. Follow, find, and share video clips on TikTok, Justin R. Young, and YouTube at Politics. We are starting to post more shorts because I found a service that does it. It's a little expensive. We'll see if it helps, but it's now easier to post. So we're posting more. You can support us. And of course, full video versions of this at YouTube, Politics is where you need to go. Also, I am on the Modern Rogue this week. A little conversation with Brian Brushwood. You can support us with a one-time donation. Look, people writing in nasty stuff. How about this? How about compliments? If you'd like to send me a compliment, you can do so. PayPal.me/payjury, PAYJURY. You can do so at Venmo, Justin-Young-20. You can do so on Cash App, PX3Cash, and you can do so by sending me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. I don't know what you guys are going to do. If I tell you, send me a compliment right now in the notes of a one-time donation, are you going to send me something mean? Are you going to send me something nice? I guess we'll all find out together on Friday's episode. Of course, the only way that you can get bonus content is if you go on over to our Substack, get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. That's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. But the only way you get your name read on the show is by heading on over and becoming a member of our Fiscal Funnertons. I like that this episode has a perfect spot where I ran out of gas. You talk extemporaneously off the top of your dome for a solid hour. And you can guess for yourself where the tank started to flicker on you, but the Fiscal Funnertons is definitely where the wheels came to the old stop. Our founding tier. They get their names read. L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes. Oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, the Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? Head on over to the Fiscal Funnertons. On Friday's edition of the program, we've got 2 great guests. Kirk Beto back on the show from National Journal. We're going to talk to him a little bit more about the Sam thing, but also whatever else is happening in the world of politics. And then a great new guest to the show. 2 new guests, 2 new women on the show this week, which I'm always very happy for. Catherine D., she writes about internet subcultures, and I want to dig into a piece she wrote about the Illithium. It's an anti-life subgroup, and one of them bombed an IVF clinic not but 2 weeks ago. So we're going to talk about internet subcultures, which is obviously something that is right up my alley. Till then, This is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only one that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.